This video is inspired by you, especially if you are a dude named Byron who wants to tow, I don't know, a 1,000 kilo boat with his Mazda CX9. But there's a broader message here, right? For all family towing. You know, you've got your SUV, you want to tow your boat, your caravan, you don't want to go super heavy. It can still bring you undone, no matter how seemingly conservative the proposition seems at the outset. And then right at the end, I'm going to show you the one thing that nobody considers. Not when they're hooking up their trailer, and certainly not when they're pontificating about which vehicle is just right for them on the showroom floor. I'm John Cadogan from AutoExpert.com.au. New cars cheap, but Australia only. Website. Card. Caught me on the hop. Obviously, because, you know, I'm building a little monument to the second law of thermodynamics. I normally do try and clean the joint up so I can look nice for you, obviously, but I'm halfway through shooting the B-roll for my upcoming blockbuster epic. The Swiss cheesification of common steel shapes. And you can master this Jedi skill, dude. It is beyond excellent for, you know, modifications of ute bodies, service bodies, camper bodies in trailers and on the backs of utes and things of this nature. Also pretty good for building a pull-up bar in your backyard and whatever. It's a cool skill. You don't have to resort to the butchery method of the bimetal hole saw. Not that it won't do the job. It will, but, you know, given its propensity to jam when you're all the way up a ladder drilling a big hole like this in a piece of metal, and then the world just Isaac Newtons the shit out of you and you wake up with an emergency doctor who looks about 12 looking down at you like this, shaking his head saying, dudes your age should never get up ladders, and nobody needs that. It's humbling, okay? So hit the subscriber thingo and the notification thingo and learn how to use this baby instead and these babies to do the job in a much more Jedi fashion. Now, before we get into this whole tow proposition, shameless sponsor plug, I'm sponsoring this episode, autoexpert.com.au/solar. Great way to insulate yourselves from inevitable power bill rises. And if you've already got the panels on your frickin' roof, add a battery. So much cheaper than an EV, so much safer, so much more effective, because you harvest the photons during the day and then you burn them as electrons in the evening without buying very much power at all from those bastards who own the grid. Plus, you get blackout protection and it adds value to your home. autoexpert.com.au/solar for more on that. Now, with that out of the way, dude named Byron, who goes, "Oh, John, huge fan of your content and many informative videos." I hate it when they do that. Troweling it on like that. Like, I don't need foreplay. Just drag me out onto the dance floor and put the palm of your hand on my buttock and ask your freaking question, dude. You didn't write to me to tell me what a great job I'm doing. You want something. We all do. It's so shameless, the human condition. Just grab hold and ask. You might get lucky. Watching a lot of your content, I see you are a big advocate of having a correct tow vehicle for the purpose and ensuring you don't exceed the vehicle's abilities. Yeah, I am. That's very important, actually, because the trailers we tow, these so-called pig-type trailers, they're unstable intrinsically in pitch, that accelerating, braking, head rotation, the plane of pitch, the axis of pitch, right? And also in yaw, like the old LP records, if you're as old as me. Okay, they're unstable like that. And differential diagnosis for instability of this nature is if you magic away the vehicle and don't have the jockey wheel deployed, the yoke on the trailer, it just hits the frickin' ground, does it not? Okay, so unstable in pitch is how they roll. Doesn't matter if they're single axle, 2 axles or 3 axles, they're unstable in pitch, and they're unstable like this as well, which is why they change direction so easily as you drive down the road. And this means that they rely on the intrinsic stability of the vehicle in front doing the towing to make them stable. Obviously, the bigger and beefier the trailer in relation to the vehicle pulling it around the joint, the more likely it is for the trailer to take charge and nudge the whole thing off the road. And if that happens in a worst case scenario, with a truck coming towards you, I mean, the public's coming towards you and you're trying to avoid the 1,000 trees you're going to be driving past in every 15 minutes. So this can be a real issue. And for this reason, conservatism is a really good idea with towing. Try to be well below the manufacturer's stated limit, and even better, try really, really hard for the trailer to be less than the curb weight of the vehicle towing it. That makes things so much safer. Now, Byron goes on and says, I'm not talking about what the manufacturer thinks it can tow versus what is actually safe. And this is a good point as well, Byron. You've really engaged your hand now. I like it. Manufacturers are in an arms race. So if I'm manufacturer A and you're manufacturer B, and you sell a competing vehicle that's got a 2.5 tonne tow capacity, and I've only got 2 tonnes, then I've just handed you a reason to convince someone to buy your car. And I freaking hate that. I don't want to do that. So I go to my product development team and I say, dudes, pump up the tow capacity, will you? Do some tests, whatever, write an email. Make it look official. It's an arms race, and the actual ability to do that safely, to tow whatever safely, is often grossly overstated. Like, if you think it's a good idea to tow 3.5 tonnes with a conventional dual cab ute, you're living on a different planet than me. A, they make it almost impossible to do that in practice because you can't carry hardly anything in the ute if you do it, but they just want it in the brochure so they can talk it up and make people buy one, okay? Now, Byron goes on and goes, we have a 2023 Mazda CX9 all-wheel drive and we love the car. I want to purchase a boat, all up tow weight, 1,000 kilos, with an assumption of 100 kilo tow ball download mass. Okay. All CX9s have a 2-tonne tow capacity and 150 kilo static tow ball download limit. So maximum load that the tow ball can exert on the vehicle, static, meaning not rolling, not dynamic loads, static loads, on a level surface, 150 kilos. And therefore Byron's proposition, 1,000 kilos, it's half the manufacturer's tow capacity limit, and 100 kilos on the tow ball is only 2/3 of the stated maximum there. So you would think, 2 thumbs up, I would, except that I ran, got to tell you, the bench is covered in frickin' Satan's fingernails from the pilot holes to Swiss cheesify the steel. And so if I suddenly divulge Osama bin Laden, the bin Laden, tomatoes home address, as if I'm being interrogated by the CIA, you'll know why. These things are unfrickin' forgiving. Anyway, you'd think this is a good idea, you know. It seems like a great idea, but perhaps au contraire, because the details really matter. Byron goes on. We're looking at taking this away on family holidays, which will include my parents. So this means 4 adults plus a toddler. Dude, that sounds properly memorable. What a pity I'm unavailable to join you that day. I do wonder how your wife feels about this proposition, going away with a toddler and your parents. I'm sure they're very nice people, but the term living hell comes to mind, and then you can all go out together on the boat and be trapped, you know, surrounded by sharks. Who wouldn't want to do that? Just say. Obviously some items will be in the car plus a few items in the boat. Well, obviously. dude, you're going to need life jackets and, whatever. I believe the Mazda is capable of this, but I'd appreciate your point of view regarding this in reality and being safe on the road. Yeah, good plan. Like, it's a good idea to ask because I suspect there's duos ways that this is likely to bite Byron on the arse. And that means it could bite you on the arse as well if you go into the showroom and look at the capacities and go, well, I'm well under that, I'm good to go. Because you might not be. So here's the next thing you've got to think about. You've got to think about the gross vehicle mass of the SUV, right? Family SUVs do not typically have a great deal of payload. So let's do a little thought experiment. And without wanting to accuse any of Byron's family or him of being morbidly obese, 4 adults plus their shit for a little holiday, you'd have to assume 100 kilos each, would you not? That's if you haven't spent, the past 5 years eating 3 squares a day at Macca's. So there's 400 kilos, and one kid, plus all the crap you need to carry to support a kid like a toddler, 50 kilos for all of that, so we're up to 450. And then crap for the boat, 50 kilos. I suppose you're going to need an esky and drinks and life raft and life jackets. Hopefully you won't need a life raft. So then something you've had, so what are we up to? 450 plus 50, that's half a tonne, right? Tow bar. Tow bar's not part of the curb weight of the vehicle because it's an accessory and it's a big heavy steel tube and there's a wiring thingo and, 50 kilos, more or less. So now we're up to 550 kilos. And the thing that some people never consider is that the tow ball download, which we're assuming here is 100 kilos, that gets added, doesn't it? Because the vehicle is carrying it. The axles of the trailer are only carrying like 90% of the load of the boat, 10%, 100 kilos, being carried by the vehicle. Therefore, that's part of the vehicle's payload. You put the scales on the vehicle, that's how it weighs, all right? So now we're up to 650 kilos as a ballpark sort of thought experiment, right? The CX5 all-wheel drives have a payload capacity of 566, sucking through the teeth, indicating, and that's a little too close to call at this stage, is it not? So when you do these broad sort of ballpark estimates of how much this and that actually might weigh, and you get over the line, like we're at 650 payload capacity for the Azami, for example, is 566, then you're going to have to start weighing everything. You're going to have to get the thing loaded up and take it to a weigh bridge just to make sure that you're not illegal. Even though you're only at half the capacity for towing, you could be over the GVM capacity, which is the all-up allowed weight of the vehicle rolling down the street, okay? So that's going to be important because, people take all kinds of funny things on holidays. Someone might have to carry, I don't know, Liberace's AR-15 and 1,000 rounds of ammunition and their golf clubs, and that's just your wife, right? So it could be a complete disaster based on GVM. And actually, the all-wheel drive versions have a much lower GVM than the front drive versions of various SUVs, principally because of the weight of the rear-wheel drive hardware. When you take that out of the vehicle, you get a bunch of payload back. Unfortunately, the front drive versions are not as good at towing, and they're also the cheap ones. So if you like the fruit, the leather and whatever else, the 20-inch wheels, then you're going to have all-wheel drive and you're going to be at the most limited for payload capacity. So you'd really want to check that because you're very close to the limit there, I'd suggest. But this is not the thing that is going to bite statistically everyone on the arse from a risk management point of view. I'll just conclude with what Byron says here. Keep up the great content. See, he's back to the foreplay. Sorry, can't offer any form of beard stroking. Try harder, dude. You're an Aussie, you've got it in you. Need a 200 series to do anything kind of comments. Kind regards, Byron. Yeah. Okay. No worries, mate. I hope you don't give this response to your solicitor. So here's the thing that bites you on the arse, okay? Most of these family type SUVs, or I don't know, many of them, I think it would be most by now, they've got a space saver spare. And it's so problematic, okay? So here's the deal with the tyres that are standard on, for example, this CX9. Depending on the spec, I think there's 18 to 20-inch wheel variants through the range, right? The Azami's got 20s, everything else is less. So the load index for them is 104 to 107, and that's printed on the sidewall of the tyre, right? It'll be like 107Z or 107W or something, right? The W being the speed rating, but the 107 is a load rating. 104 to 107 means the load capacity, maximum load capacity of the tyre is 900 kilos for 104 and 975 for 107, okay? When you fit the space saver, you're driving along, you get a flat tyre, you go, oh, fucking course, like, you know, being stuck in this metal box with the in-laws and the toddler towing a boat isn't bad enough. Let's have a flat tyre, okay? You fit the space saver because that's what it comes with. Now, it's got a 99 load rating, which is substantially lower, okay? 775 kilos, compared with the Azami on its 107 load rated tyres, which are rated to 975. So all of a sudden, you're fitting a tyre with 200 kilos less load capacity. And that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is going to be the reduced grip, which is, frankly, the reason why the speed limitation with most space savers. Okay, so here's the thing about all of that. Where do you put the space saver? Let's say you get a flat tyre on the rear. You put the space saver on the rear, which is carrying the load of the trailer, or do you swap the front tyre to the rear and then put the space saver on the front, which is trying to steer you home? I don't see that there's a good option there. So in a perfect world, you'd just get a full-size spare, would you not? Like, that's what I'd try. But there's nowhere to put it. You can't put it in the cargo bay because you'd have to engineer a place to strap it down safely. And that's very hard to do. You cannot have that thing be a projectile in a crash. That's unthinkable. You have to strap it down safely. You'd have to drill holes and think about exactly how you were doing that, because you'd have to design it for, I don't know, a 15, 20G sort of load in a crash. So that's a problem. You can't just put it where the space saver comes out of, because in a CX9, when you pop the cargo floor and have a look, the space saver sandwiches itself down between the floor of the cargo bay and a structural tubular cross member. And there's no additional space for a full width tyre. So, and then even if you do figure out where to put it on the floor, you're already sailing, I'd suggest, Satan's friggin' fingernails, you're already sailing pretty close to the manufacturer's payload limit, aren't you? And then you're going to have to figure out how to fit a 30 or 40 kilo wheel and tyre and strap down hardware into the cargo bay. So that doesn't seem like a fairly elegant option either. If you stick it on the yoke of the trailer, it's going to be more load on the tow ball, and you've got plenty of load capacity on the tow ball to play with, obviously, but you don't have very much GVM capacity to play with in the vehicle, right? So any option is going to compromise something else there. And you might say to yourself, hey, when was the last time I actually got a flat tyre? I think I've had I do a lot of driving, and I've had 2 flat tyres in 5 years. So not very often. And I haven't ever had a flat tyre when I've been towing something heavy or using a trailer at all. But I don't do that all that often, and I don't do significant distances towing something heavy. The thing about all of this is James Reason, Professor James Reason, okay? He's the father of disaster analysis, and how disasters happen and the mechanisms that disasters actually have to conform to happen. Okay, and it's a little bit like, he's got this thing, you can Google it, the Swiss cheese theory. Just Google James Reason Swiss cheese and you'll get it. It's like this. You put down all the risk factors in a particular activity and you might have, I don't know, 100 different risk factors, and then you label a slice of Swiss cheese with each one of them and you just throw them all up in the air randomly, okay? Every, I don't know, 100,000 throws or something, all the holes line up and a disaster looks straight down the barrel at you and says to the Grim Reaper, hey dude, come on through, windows open. And this is kind of the mechanism for disasters. It happens when people get run over, when car crashes happen, when there are industrial accidents. You know, it's everywhere. It's like the Matrix. You just get the Swiss cheesification, the holes line up, disaster comes on through. So you're going to get a flat tyre. One of the risk factors is when. Like if it happens at 8 o'clock on a Sunday night and you need to get home because everyone's going to work on Monday and school and all of that sort of stuff, you press on. If it had happened at 10 o'clock on a freaking Saturday morning, you just drive a short distance to the nearest tyre joint and get your flat tyre fixed or replaced, depending on the severity of the defect, right? So that would take that hole out of alignment and a disaster can't come on through. But if it's 10 o'clock on a Sunday night, you get a flat tyre, you fit the space over, the weather's a factor, traffic density is a factor, speed is a factor, because if you're out doing a holiday, you're driving sort of long distances, speed is a real factor for that, and instability, the capacity of the space saver to restrain the whole combination at highway speeds is much less than if you're just limping to the tyre shop at 50 k's an hour, which is what it was really designed for. So it's really difficult for me to say this is a great idea, because it doesn't matter if you do this 1,000 times and it's all good. What matters is the one time when all of the holes line up, right? When all of the holes line up, that is the worst day the 5 of you have ever had. And I don't know what the solution is. I think the solution is go wherever you want to go on holidays and hire a freaking boat when you get there.